Okay, so welcome. Today we're going to talk about frontline reset, that energy management on shift. Because, here's the thing is, as we touched on, a lot of the info that is out there is like, make sure you take a break and make sure you go for a walk and do this stuff before and after shift. But realistically, stress happens during the workday. And so we're going to really focus on a couple of things that you can do wherever you are. That is the goal. How do we make this easy and accessible within the reality of your workplace? Okay. Um, so we got most of the welcome and housekeeping sorted. So I'm going to just actually, sorry, Chris, can I get you to launch our first poll? Because, I like to talk while we're doing a poll, just so I can get to know a little bit about some folks. And so, which of these things resonates most with you right now? All of the above is an option in terms of what's causing you stress. Remember, the results of these polls are anonymous. So feel free to be honest. I want to acknowledge that I am joining you from Treaty 7 territory in Calgary, Alberta. The Blackfoot name for the land I live on is Mokinsis, which means the land where two rivers meet. And frankly, if you've been to Calgary, the part where the two rivers, the Bow and the Elbow, intersect is some of the most beautiful spaces that we have here. And so I think it's for me always a great reminder of the territories that we share, and a reminder of the folks who've inhabited this land for many, many, many generations. Just a quick note that as we're going along, I really encourage your participation in this workshop and this webinar. I know it's a webinar format, but I'm really encouraging us to take a little bit more of a workshop vibe to it, a little more interactive. So feel free to add comments in the chat. Feel free to share what you're thinking. Give me those reactions because, oh my gosh, I love that validation of like thumbs up or like cheerleaders and all those pieces. So feel free to do those whenever you need. As we noted, this is recorded. So just bear that in mind. But really remembering that your voice matters. So, participate in the polls when we have them. And the raise hand, I think, might be disabled, but feel free to pop any questions in the Q&A. We will be getting to those as we go along. So as we're still looking at our first poll, awesome. So I'm not sure if you folks can see these results, but I'll just tell you that the all of the above had 53%, which, to be honest, is not surprising to me. But what that also tells me is that, when we add this together, what it also means is that 73% of you have too much to do and not enough time to do it in. And let's see if I can do math on the fly. 70% are dealing with constant interruptions, and 63% of you are running on empty. I don't need to tell you that that's not sustainable. You know that, you live that, you feel it. And so when we talk today, some of these things, already feel familiar to you. And feel free to tell me in the chat too, what are some of the other stressors you're experiencing in your workplace? What are some things that I didn't list here that are contributing to your stress? Part of the reason that I like to start with this is that I think sometimes when it comes to this stuff, we feel like we're all alone. We're the only ones who feel this way, and the problem is us. We're not doing self care right. And I just like to kind of get these polls and share and validate that you're not alone. And the problem isn't you. The problem is that we're kind of working in unsustainable workplaces, right? There's too much workload, and you work a really high demand job. And I just feel it's important to acknowledge that, right? And what that means is that in order for you to be healthy, to be successful, and to maintain your energy level and maintain a stress level, and being able to manage the stress that comes up at home too, because as it's noted in the chat, home stress is a big challenge too for a lot of folks. Um, we need to acknowledge that our part is only part of the problem, right? We can't self care our way out of systemic problems. And so, when we talk today about strategies we can use in the workplace, I want to be really clear that what we're talking about is things that you can do to help minimize the impact on yourself, to help minimize the impact of the stress and the pressures that you're facing, because you deserve to feel as happy and healthy as possible in your workplace. And these tools are part of that picture. Yeah. So we're focusing on what we can control ourselves because we can't control provincial funding. We can't control administration or patient loads. Those things are out of our hands. And we want to focus on what is within our control. So that's what we're focusing on today. All right. So, a couple of things that we're covering. We're going to talk a little bit about how to recognize the signs. I'm not going to get too deep in that because let's be honest, y'all probably feel it in your bodies. You know how it feels. So, we don't need to spend too much time on that, but I do want to highlight a couple of things just so you're aware of them. We're also going to then talk about the energy reset matrix and the stress reset system, which are those two systems that are going to help give you the tools. I'm not going to stand here and be prescriptive and say you should take a bubble bath or make sure you take a 10-minute walk every day because that might not work for you. That might not work for your schedule. And instead, we're going to talk about how you can brainstorm for yourself and try out things that are going to support you. I'm going to give you some ideas. Some of them might work for you, some of them might not. We also have a workbook that's going to be coming out with the materials for it. Let me just see. I think, oh yeah, I was just able to pop it in the chat. So it's going to have a summary of what we talked about, as well as worksheets for you for these. If you aren't able to print it off or pull it off, your computer, that's okay. If you just have a scrap piece of paper handy, the parts where we get to the interactive spots, where I'm going to get you to like brainstorm and write out some of this stuff, we can do that with just a regular slip of paper, but then you've got this tool later. Okay. And then we're going to do a little bit of action planning so that you're not just leaving our time together with some cool ideas of what you could do, but we're actually going to talk about how we can start putting this into action in a way that's sustainable. Because let's be real, my friends, when you are already stressed out and feeling maybe a little burnt out or overwhelmed, like you've got too much to do already, the idea of adding a to-do list of things to look after yourself is overwhelming. And especially for my neurodivergent friends on the call, that's particularly challenging. So we want to make it be bite-sized and actionable and take that all or something mentality, not an all or nothing mentality. Okay, sound good? If that sounds good to you, just give me a thumbs up either in the chat or in the reactions. And while you're doing that, I'm going to pop on over to the self-care disconnect. Okay, so in let's say 5 words are left, 3 or 5 or more, I don't care. Do what you need. Tell me in the chat, what does self-care mean to you? Like when I say self-care, what do you think of? What comes up for you? I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. And you can feel free to, pull from any of the things that are on the shared screen of like some of the things that we're told about self-care. And while you're filling in your chat, yes, slowing down, great choice. Things you can do to look out for yourself can include baths, walks, taking your meds, exercise. Thank you so much for naming taking medication. I think sometimes we forget about that practical aspect of self-care. Self-care can also mean meal planning or putting in a grocery order to pick up on your way home from shift or, getting stuff delivered to your house that you need or doing your laundry can be self-care because self-care can also be those practical pieces. We've got meditation and reflection. Oh, allowing yourself room for error. I love that. Sometimes self-care is only doing the necessary tasks. Yeah. And it can kind of seem like a lot sometimes. I'm so glad you named that, Tammy, because sometimes it does feel like a lot. Getting enough sleep. Yeah, and cleaning our bathrooms can make us happy. Honestly, a little like good rage clean. Also, since I have started listening to audiobooks, let me tell you, cleaning has gotten a lot more fun. And so then this chore that I got to do that then lowers my stress level, it's like I'm being read to the whole time I'm doing it. I wanted to comment on the disconnect that we see with self-care, right? Because we're often told, like, do these things, look after yourself, take the time that you need for you. And that's like all sweet and good and everything. But also, like, when are we supposed to do this? Because not only do you have the work responsibilities that you have, but you also have family life responsibilities, personal life responsibilities. Even if it's just like you and a cat at home, which by the way, not to knock cats, I got 3 of them. But even if it's just you're taking care of at home, there's no like kids or elderly parents that you're supporting or partners or dogs that need walking, it still is a lot, right? Like, did anyone warn us that adulting was going to be cleaning the kitchen non-stop, whether we ate there or not, whether we got takeout or not? My goodness, I am continually blown away by how much cleaning my kitchen requires. And like the laundry just keeps coming, right? There's a lot to do to, function in modern times, even if we have zero stressors coming from anywhere else. So it's hard to do all the things. And then also to think about the fact that, especially if you've got a 12-hour shift or even an 8-hour shift, that is a long time to go without any recharges or self-care breaks or any of that, right? Even if you did all the things successfully after hours, if you were to run your phone battery for 8 or 12 hours straight, constantly doing tasks on your phone, it's going to run out of batteries. You're going to run out of juice. And it's the same for our bodies and our brains. If we don't have ways to have those quick plugins, those quick recharges throughout our day, we are dragging by the end. It's not our fault. It's just the natural order. And so what we want to focus on today is how we can prevent that burnout progression or that like drained energy feeling by inserting manageable and doable things that help boost us. That sound good? Yeah, I think so too. All right. So this is not always a linear path. And, if you look at this and you're like, burnout isn't a word that resonates for me, I'm just exhausted, or I feel overwhelmed, or I'm just tired, or maybe something else, that's okay. You can substitute whatever words you like. But what we're talking about here is how we can move kind of along the spectrum from, feeling happy and healthy, everything's fine, to like feeling a little tired, a little worn down, to then more exhausted, and then fully depleted. Like we're dragging ourselves out of bed or dragging ourselves around to the point where we've got nothing left to give. Now, I want to also note that for folks in caregiving professions, usually this shows up first at home before it shows up at work because y'all are committed to your jobs. You deeply care about people. That's why you got into this line of work. And so you are going to dig deep in your reserves to be your best, most present, most connected version of yourself while you're at work. And I think that's really admirable. And what sometimes is the consequence is that when we're more depleted, we're able to like manage the work shift, but as soon as it's over, we kind of collapse. We don't have that energy or that joy or that connection or that feeling of openness for the rest of our lives. Or sometimes what can also happen, and maybe you notice this too, is like if you're dealing with, the like if you're out on the floor or, dealing with folks in the care home, residents, or clients, whatever words your organization likes to use to describe these folks. And let me know too, because I want to make sure I'm using the right words. Sometimes every word's a little different. But like when you're on shift nursing and prioritizing helping the people that you're there to help, you are that friendly, smiley, adorable, loving, kind, caring person that we all know that you are. But then as soon as you go into the break room, the like you have to let it go because you can only hold that mask in a way for so long, right? Like, and I'm not saying it's a bad mask or it's a bad thing to do, but I am saying if the second you walk into the break room, you feel like you're going to flump on the floor and you just want to lie there for a few minutes, that is a sign that something is not working. Yeah. We've commented in the chat. I'm a mom first, always, same. But it's tricky to self-regulate when we're at home and when work is overwhelming us. Yeah. And so then what sometimes ends up happening is we share our least good selves or we don't show up as the person we want to be for the people who matter the most to us. And so if you're noticing any of this, it doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. You're not broken. It's not weakness. This is what happens to us under sustained stress. And, I've got a couple of things, here that are talk about what drains coworkers, and in particularly in healthcare and caregiving environment. And so, tell me in the chat if some of these resonate, or maybe I missed something. So feel free to share. But, a couple of the things are that emotional labor, always giving, always on, that is tiring, that drains us. The unpredictability of a shift, what you can expect, you don't know what you're going to expect, where you're going to go, what you're going to need for the most part. There might be some routine parts, but you never know what's going to happen. And then switching between tasks, that constant switching and interrupting is actually really hard on our brains. We can't actually multitask. So fallacy that we like to believe about ourselves. But that task switching really zaps our mental bandwidth and our mental brain power and our ability, like our capacity to handle the things that come towards us, especially for folks who have neurodiverse brains. So if you are an ADHD or someone who has like an autistic brain or any of these things, or like are living with a mental health condition, those task switching drains more of your energy, zaps you more than it does for someone who's not experiencing that kind of brain. There's also compassion fatigue, which is when you're tired, your caring gets tired. I had a friend describe it that way, but like seeing continual suffering or harm can really take a toll on us. And then also the system constraints, right? Like we really want to acknowledge that there are systemic constraints here. So these are some of the things that can cause us to feel drained. And if we look at them, if we're honest, they're not really in our control. There's only so much you can do about these. And so we really want to focus on what we can control, which is mitigating and minimizing the impact that those things have on us. So here's the good news. We can do something about that. We don't need more time. We have like a little bit of time, but we're going to talk about things we can squeeze in because I know your schedules. I know you're not able to find more time. I know that nurses across this country don't drink water on shift because they don't have time to take pee breaks. And you snack while you're charting, right? Like I know the time constraints are there. So we're going to talk about tools that fit without taking you away from your shift time. Okay. We also, want to look at things that are free and accessible. We don't want to try and spend budget on this because we also know that budgets are tricky, both in care settings, but also family budgets are tricky these days. And you don't need to change jobs. You got into this for a reason. You love this work. We want to keep you feeling as happy and healthy as you can be in these roles because you matter and the care that you give matters. And we want to support you with these things. We're going to focus on two simple things: our energy levels and our stress levels. And, I was just saying to Chris before we hopped on this call, the thing that's funny to me is that I have these conversations with folks across industries. I talk to people in manufacturing. I talk to people in law offices. I talk to people in caregiving, like cybersecurity, you name it. I've probably talked to someone in that role. And the tools always come down to these two things, but how we make it work. Oh yeah, like tourism, actors. How we make these work is what's different. And that's the part we're going to focus on today. Because I can tell you about self-care and how you need to manage your energy and your stress until the cows come home. But my friends, if I don't tell you how we can think about it in the reality of your workplace, this was not a good use of your time. And I respect your time too much for that. Okay. So first thing I want to talk about is the energy reset matrix. And so in the workbook that I shared, I think you'll get a copy of, it's kind of, we've got this like spot where you can fill it all in. And what we want to think about is kind of like, here, I'm going to move my screen over here. I don't know what's downloading. Okay, that's great. Thanks, computer. Love it when they offer things like that. So we want to think about things. There's going to be some stuff that drain our energy a little bit, and knowing what those are, what drain, like is a bigger drain or like happens quickly, or versus the things that take longer to drain or are longer ongoing, knowing what's in each of those can be really helpful for noticing and preparing. Partly because if you know something, and also everyone's mileage is going to vary because what drains you is going to be different than what drains me. I'm just going to pop the PDF back in the chat. If it hasn't come through for you, let us know. And it's going to be on the website with the recording as well afterwards. You have access to it there. I hope. Then there's also going to be things that restore us quickly and things that take a little bit longer. So when we talk about quick ones, we want them to be less than 5 minutes. Tammy, I'm not sure about why it's not saving, but we'll make sure we get a copy of the PDF available for you. Just know that for today, you don't need it. It's just a good reference manual. Okay, cool. So longer restores are going to be the things that you have longer time. Like if by some miracle you get 10 minutes free during the day, you could do something longer there. Or maybe it's something you do on your way home from shift or on your way to shift. Who knows, right? So what we think about is we want to identify what drains us, what restores us, and how quickly we can do it. So let's walk through it. If you don't have the workbook, which I think is most of us, grab a plain piece of paper and just draw those, like just two lines in the middle, drains on the left side, restores on the right, longer, shorter. Just kind of copy that down. I'm going to pop over to, and we'll come back to this when we have a few minutes to go through it and kind of like spend some time on your own. But here's just like kind of idea, and you can share in the chat or just jot it down on your own paper, but thinking about what drains your energy most on the shift. So here are some things that could be happening. So quick drains are things that like happen in like less than 5 minutes. And, 5 minutes is an arbitrary number. So if you're like, 2 minutes feels better for me, go for it. But, things like constant interruptions, fatigue from alarms going off or alerts going off, some of that emotional suppression that we do when we're there to respond and support the folks who we're there to serve. We sometimes have to like pull down our own emotions or kind of like stuff them off to the side so that we can be, you know, in the moment and doing our role. Sometimes we skip our water breaks and our bathroom breaks. So we have rushed transitions because there's only so much time, or we're like, I don't know when I'm going to have time to chart. That thought of I need to do that. What am I going to do? How am I going to eat? That's draining. That's a shorter one. Longer ones could be, here's again a couple of examples. I mean, you have to have a difficult conversation with family members, or longer charting and extensive documentations, staff conflict or tensions, when critical events happen back to back, things like that. There are likely others. And if you have any ideas, of ones that are hard for you, feel free to put them in. Now, I also want to note that for some of us, the same thing that's draining for me might be energizing for you, and that's okay, right? It does not, say anything about you or your character. We just want to notice what are the things that impact you. Sorry. And so just a quick note with the PDF, it looks like it's not letting folks download it from Zoom. My apologies for that. We'll make sure you get a copy of it. Again, for now, just grab a plain piece of paper or like a scrap piece of paper will even work. And you can just do like a little thing. If you don't have one of those, but you've got like your phone handy, I guess, you just like jot down the 4 titles. Okay. The next thing I want to talk about is and we're going to spend a little bit of time thinking through this as a group, give you a little bit of quiet time, partly so I can take a sip of water. But you'll spend some time brainstorming your own so that it's okay if you don't have them off the top of your head right now. The other thing we want to think about is what restores us, what recharges us, what brings our energy back. These can be personalized things. The workbook also has a list of different options within it and some other ideas. Now, what works for you is maybe not going to be the same thing that works for me. Again, remember, we're all different. But these are some examples of some things. Now, also want to just note fresh air, stepping outside for a minute might not always be doable, but is there an open window you can find? That can work too. Or is there a sunny spot you can just stand in for like 30 seconds? That can do it. What I want us to do before I move on to the longer restorers is I want us to do one of these energy restorers together. And these are like the nice thing about these, especially some of the breathing resets or quick body scan, or even like clenching and then releasing your muscles, are things that you can do anywhere that you are. You don't have to step away necessarily. And so when we think about quick energy restores, we want to try to think of stuff that we can do while we're at our regular, like in our regular day job or the regular, experiences we have during a shift. Okay. So what we're going to do together is we're going to do a little breathing reset. And sometimes like, also, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge that like, every time someone talks about self-care and stress management and energy management, we always seem to talk about breathing exercises and like noticing where you are, being mindful, like noticing the feel of your sweater on your skin. The reason that we keep saying these is because they actually work and it's annoying and stupid sometimes, or that's how I feel sometimes. I'm like, another breathing exercise, but they actually work. And that's why we keep doing them. They're also often things that you can do again without stepping away from your workspace. So we're going to take a deep breath together, a couple of deep breaths. So I'm going to get everyone to just do a big exhale together now. Go, whatever, just let it all go. And then breathe in for a count of four. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold that breath at the top. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then let's breathe out for six. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let's do that again. So count in your own head to four. Now, if holding your breath felt uncomfortable at all, you can skip that part and just move to the exhale. If exhaling for six felt too long, just do five. And let's do another breath at your own pace. And then let's do one more. So, the fun thing about this and why this one is one I really like to share, and the simplest, easiest way to do it is don't even worry about the hold. Just notice how many counts your natural inhale is, and then add one count to the exhale. And that stimulates our parasympathetic nervous system that rest and reset. Because what happens is when we are in a stress state, when we're feeling low energy, we tend to have really short exhales because our body is oxygenating our blood. So we're not exhaling as much. When we have a longer exhale than our inhale, it signals to our brain and our body that the threat has passed. So I love that one. You can do it wherever you want. There's also some ideas for longer restorers, thing you can do when you actually get to take a break, or when you have a little bit more time. So a little bit of movement. You could walk. You could actually eat lunch away from a desk. In theory, I know that practically that doesn't always work. So, take it with a grain of salt. Um, have a team debrief, right? Just talk about potential solutions together. Talk about things that you're doing to manage your health and ask other people to share what they're doing for self-care. If you've got time to connect with a friend outside of the workplace, that can also be really good. Even if it's just sending a text or a voice memo to a loved one can be great. And then any kind of movement is often really good for our bodies. What's cool about that one is that movement, and it can look like anything. It can look like some shoulder shrugs or some neck rolls, or even just like a couple like little twists or stretches. What's cool about movement is that it has the dual impact of reducing our stress while also increasing our energy, which is pretty cool. And again, it can look like whatever is good for you in that moment. And if you've got time for some kind of creative outlet, that is also amazing. So, what we're going to do is we are going to take like 3 minutes, let's say, and just kind of jot down for your own energy map. So, in the drain column, write down some things that drain you. Now, if you're like, I don't know if it's a long one or a short one, that's okay. Don't overthink it. Just put it down on the drains list. That's all you need to know. And then we'll take a minute or two and write down the things that give you energy. Write that in your restore column. And if you're like, I don't have a pen and paper near me, that's cool too. You can grab your phone and start a list in your notes app or something like that. All right. So I'm going to give you a few minutes to do this. The other piece of your exercise is to identify the quick wins, things that'll take less than 5 minutes. All right. So I'll give you 3 minutes to work on your list, and feel free to share them in the chat with us. 3 minutes always feels like a long time when we're just sitting there. Hey. Okay. So if you had a chance to jot down even just a couple of ideas that can be really helpful, maybe keep that as an open list and something that you come back to over time. You keep adding to it as you think of things that are draining for you and then the things that are recharging. The reason we want to notice what is draining for us is that when we know our own bodies and brains a little bit better, we know what has that zap for us. When it happens or when we notice it happening, we then know that that is a time that we're going to need another recharger. Yeah, we're going to need to do something to restore when that drainer happens. Otherwise, what ends up happening is like imagine your phone battery for a sec, right? And the funny thing about our phone batteries is I always joke that, you know, most of us can tell without looking at our phones within 10% what our battery on our phone is. And it's kind of too bad our brains don't come with a similar warning system. But, our phone, as it gets used, as the battery drains throughout the day, like we know certain tasks, certain apps are going to zap the phone battery a little bit faster. It's a similar thing, right? So you know that if you're going to like be listening to like an audiobook for 3 hours while also scrolling Instagram, I don't know, speaking for myself sometimes, or playing your favorite like video game that for some reason uses way too much power, you're going to want to charge that phone again. You're not going to want to leave it at that zapped stage where you go, say, pick up your kids from school or whatever it is that you're doing that's going to like make you be in a position where you can't necessarily charge your phone. And so when we know that we have energy drains coming up in our day, or when we encounter one, that can then be our cue to do a little bit more of a recharge. Because otherwise, if we just keep using our own personal batteries, the level just keeps going down and down and down and down and down. And then we have less available energy and capacity for the things that come up later in our days. That might be our friends and our family, our personal lives, or it could be our coworkers in the break room, or it could be the patients who we see at the end of the day, right? And so giving ourselves those little energy boosts and those restores throughout the day helps us stay closer. Now, you're not going to be at 100% all day. I mean, I wish that was possible, but it's not realistic for most of us. But, when you're noticing that you're getting towards 25% or even like 50%, maybe you can do something that's a little booster. Or if you're like, hey, I'm at 80%, I got a bit of time right now, I'm going to do a booster that's going to get me back up to like 90 or 100%. So I've got the energy I need for the rest of the day. So that's where this is helpful. And then also when we have a list of things that are quick energizers or also the longer term ones, then we don't have to spend time thinking about what to do, right? Like if I know that I can do, say, that breathing exercise that we did together, and it's going to give me a bit of an energy boost, I can do that anytime I think of it. I can do it throughout the day, and maybe it's going to add 2% every time I do it, or maybe 5%. I don't know. But it's easy to fit in. And then it just helps keep that energy level a little more stable. Okay. So feel free to share some of your energy boosts that you identified into the chat. Part of why this is helpful is because then it also helps other folks to have some new ideas of things they could try. So feel free to add those. And while you're doing that, I'm going to start talking a little bit about stress. Now, managing our energy through the energy matrix, noticing what drains us, giving us the supports that we need. That's really important. But we also need tools to tackle stress when it happens. And you will note that I did not say if, I said when, because I recognize the reality of your workplace and also all of our lives, right? Like, no matter which work industry I was talking to right now, I would be telling you stress is going to happen. We need a plan for when it does. And the things that we do to manage our stress need to be things that we could do in the moment, often without stepping away from a workstation. So let's get into it. Understanding your stress response is really important. I want to talk real quick about a stress response. I'm not going to get into it too much. There's loads of information out there, but I want to make sure we all are super clear on this piece because as humans, we have an overly sensitive, very jumpy stress response. And when you think about it in evolutionary perspective, it makes a lot of sense. Our prehistoric ancestors were smaller and probably slower, and less sharp and pointy than a lot of the things that wanted to eat them. And so having a hair trigger stress response that anything could be a threat or a potential threat is how our ancestors survived to, evolve us to the humans that we are now. Challenges, this survival mechanism that was really useful thousands of years ago has not changed very much and is not adapted to modern life. So our sweet little brains that are still operating on old operating systems and old stress response systems think that a ping on your cell phone is the same threat as a rustling at the water hole. It's probably not, right? Your notification that you got a text message, probably not a threat, but your sweet body and brain react like it is. We have a physiological, so body and brain response to perceived threats, what we think might possibly be a threat. We don't know if it's a threat yet, but it might be. So we want to be on alert because if you think about it, it was safer to be ready to respond to a threat than to be like, I'm sure it's nothing, we'll be fine, and ignore it on the off chance that it was an actual threat, right? Better to freak out about a perceived threat and have it be nothing than ignore an actual threat. Yeah. Super not helpful for those of us with anxious brains who think everything is a perceived threat now. But here we are. So this happens without much of our conscious input. But once it happens, that's where we can influence what happens next, right? My brain picks up on a perceived threat, stress response kicks off. And once I notice it's happening, this is where I can act. So here's what we've got for the stress response system. This is about interrupting the stress cycle before it takes over. And also because it really zaps our energy too. Part of it, step one, is that we notice. Step two is we interrupt. And step three, we choose to act differently. I also want to say that at first, this is way harder than it sounds. And over time, as you practice it, like most things, like riding a bike, like some of the things you do every day, like putting in an IV probably comes easier over time. All right. So let's get into it. We're going to launch our second poll, which is asking you what's your most common stress signal. There's a couple of options there. And some of them, yours might be not on there, or maybe you're finding other things. Again, anonymous answers. So feel free to, be honest. Sydney, I have a raised hand from you. Do you have a question for us? I'm not sure if we can unmute you. So if you've got a question, do you want to pop it in the Q&A, or if it's a technical concern, do you want to maybe let us know in the chat? Cool. Okay, so I'll give you folks a minute here. And there's this list on the screen is not a comprehensive list. It is kind of just an idea. The other thing that I would want us to know is that these stress signals also overlap with some of the signals that we get from other mental health responses. Also, physical tension can just be, I worked out too hard yesterday, or I pulled a muscle while I was sleeping. I'm 47. That happens sometimes. And so recognizing that these things aren't necessarily a stress response, but can be. All right, let's maybe close that poll and see what we found for most common. Emotional reactivity wins the day. Nice. I mean, not nice. Doesn't feel great when it's happening. I'm going to share mine. For me, it's a combo of emotional reactivity and physical tension. And the part that's really frustrating for me is that my pain tolerance is low enough that I can walk around with super tense muscles for like a month and not have any pain. And then something stressful happens, like I have like a more stressful trigger, and then I just have this like total back pain flare up. It is so annoying. Sometimes it shows up also as like stomach aches, and other aches and pains in your body for that one. And then change behavior. Yeah, feeling that sense of rushing and like being a little snappier can really do it. And mental fog, also a fun one, which also for some of us could also just be a symptom of perimenopause or menopause could also be related to how our brains are wired. So there's many different things that can contribute to these, but noticing what your own stress triggers are and how it shows up, as well as how it shows up most immediately in the moment. I know that for me, if I'm grouchy or angry, it probably is a sign that I'm stressed about something. And so when I notice that I'm feeling more angry, I pay attention to that. I pause and do that, like, interrupt piece that we talk about, or that we will talk about in a moment. So again, everyone's a little bit different, but noticing yours can be really helpful. What we want to do when we notice the stress response coming, and it could be like even just your shoulders suddenly become earrings, we want to take a moment to do something to interrupt that stress cycle. That calming breath that we did can work great. Yeah. So feel free to pull that in, which is great again, because it also has that energy boost. You can also do an activity like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 grounding. And let's actually take a moment to do this one together. Just to take a moment for it. It takes like a minute, but it can be really helpful and really powerful when you experience it. There's also some that are noted in the notebook, and then also here around like splashing cold water on your wrists can be really helpful. Or if you can splash cold water on your face, that's also good, but sometimes wrists is easier. Even just like holding something cold, like an ice cube or an ice pack, can help with that. And then again, tensing, releasing those muscle groups, and then even just naming the feeling. So let's take a moment together to do the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So without thinking too hard about it, look around the space that you're in right now, and in your brain, list 5 things that you can see. And you can just do this in your head, or if you want to share it in the chat, you're more than welcome to. And once you've listed those, listen for a moment. What are 4 things you can hear? So if there's the sound of my voice, there may be a fan in the background. Is there a coworker? Is someone clicking a pen? Once you've got those, what are 3 things you can touch? It could be your feet on the floor. It could be a desk. It could be your clothing against your body. Then think of 2 things you can smell. It could be a coffee, tea, antiseptic. And then 1 thing that you can taste. Just noticing the sensation in your mouth right now. So this is one that you can do whenever, wherever. What's great about it is that it helps bring us back into the moment and noticing what's around us. So that's step 2. Do something to interrupt the stress cycle. Another one that's not listed here that I just love is just doing this. Just go, stop. Right. And like the action of like a hand stop signal can be really powerful to interrupt that stress cycle. Naming the feeling, or even just saying, okay, stop. I'm stressing right now. I'm having a stress response. I want to stop it. Just that interrupting thought can do a lot. And then the next part is to choose your next action. So asking yourself, what do I actually need right now? Now, it might be something you can do in that moment. It might be something that you can't. So maybe you're just going to like shake out your shoulders. Maybe you're like, I need to take like a bathroom break as soon as I can. Let me just finish up this and then go. Maybe you need some support. Maybe you can call someone to help you. The thing is that we want to make a choice about, like, to identify what it is that you need in this moment, and to make a choice to do it as soon as you realistically can. The key is that we're choosing instead of just reaction. So here's an example of how that can all kind of come together. And feel free to share in the chat of what you would do in this scenario using these tools. So here's the situation. It's 2 p.m. You haven't had lunch. 3 residents need you at once. A family member's upset and your back hurts and you kind of want to scream. So you do an energy check. You notice you're kind of in the red. You are low on energy right now. You're noticing that your jaw is tight and your thoughts are racing. And you can interrupt. Maybe you're going to do a couple of breaths. Maybe you're going to do the stop. And then choose what you could do next. Here's an example of something you could do, but there are other options, right? But notice how it kind of progresses together. We notice that energy, we notice our stress, and we interrupt by, you know, taking those deep breaths or noticing some things around us, even just like shrugging your shoulders around a little, right? Because if you notice that, or like opening and releasing your jaw, just moving it a little bit side to side. Yeah. So knowing that these are scenarios or tools that you can use in these scenarios. I also know, and I encourage you to share in the chat too, what are some things that get in the way of doing these things for you, right? Because here's some common ones I hear. I don't have time. My workplace doesn't support this. It won't make a difference. I'll forget. These are real concerns. They're not excuses, right? These are things that legitimately get in the way. And noticing what gets in the way for you personally in your workplace is a really important part of learning how to support yourself and how to put these tools into action. The funny thing is these are internal tools that you control, right? You don't need permission. There's no policy change required for you to start doing these in your day to day. You don't have to tell anyone that you're doing this if your workplace doesn't support it. Additionally, a lot of these techniques take a few seconds, right? 30 seconds, maybe a little more. So you can insert them when and where you need to. And I know we sometimes think that if it's not perfect, it's not everything, it's not going to matter. And I am here to tell you that from my own personal experience and the experience with my clients and teaching these tools over many years, these little pieces add up, right? Here's one way to think about it. If every day you added one fruit or vegetable to your meals, maybe you added like one fruit or one vegetable to every meal you ate. That doesn't sound like a lot, or maybe even just one meal, but like let's say you add it to lunch and dinner, just so we got like some nice even math. Well, that's going to be 14 pieces of fruits or vegetables over the course of a week. And then you start multiplying that over the course of 52 weeks in a year. That is a massive change and a massive impact, right? If you walk 10 steps, those first 10 steps aren't going to make the difference, but doing those 10 steps consistently adds up. Taking the stairs instead of the elevator once, not going to change your life that one time, but somewhere between the first time and the thousandth time, it makes that difference. And just recognizing that these little wins, these little pieces compound over time and are always, always, always a little something, whatever you can fit in is better than nothing. If you can do 2 deep breaths once during your day, that's more energy and less stress than you would have had without it. So remembering that those little pieces count. So I encourage you on our way out, tell us in the shift or in the chat, pardon me, one thing that you'll try in your next shift. Make it specific. It doesn't have to be anything big. And if you're like me, you're probably thinking, what can I do that will have the biggest impact? And I'm going to ask you to resist that urge. I encourage you to pick something easy, something doable, something that you are 95% sure you could do in your next shift. Quick wins help us feel better. It gives us momentum. Plus, it builds us that trust that we can do these things. We can make these changes for ourselves. And remember that something's better than nothing. And as you build the habit, and as these things become habits, you can optimize them. So we've got a couple in the chat, which I love. Trying the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 grounding. Yeah. Body scan while going to the bathroom. Amazing. I have another bathroom tip. Sorry, like might be awkward, but resist the urge to check your phone when you're in the bathroom. That can be another one that's really easy, really helpful. We often look at our phones and it just doesn't give us that same break. So, like, treat your pee break like an actual break as much as you can. All right. And if you can link these to something you're already doing, Marla, that was the best comment. We're in healthcare. There's no weird topics. If you can link these to something you're already doing, like that bathroom break or 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 grounding when you refill your coffee cup, things like that can be really helpful. There are some resources, the download available for the workbook, as well as the energy matrix, and it's got a stress reset reminder card in it. So we'll make sure we get that to you folks. And I just want to, remind you that, self-care isn't selfish. It's how we sustain what we do. And, we often talk about pouring from an empty cup. But what I actually want to talk about is that when you try and boil an empty kettle, I saw this on the internet a while back. I saw it on Instagram, where someone said that boiling an empty kettle is a much better metaphor for burnout or exhaustion because if you pour from an empty cup, nothing happens. But if you try and boil an empty kettle, you can wreck your kettle. And if you do it long enough without addressing it, you can burn your house down. And I think that that's a really appropriate metaphor. We have just a couple of minutes for questions. I'm sorry, I always get excited and keep talking, and then we run low on time for question. I don't know that the raise hand button works, so my apologies that that's here. So feel free to pop them in the chat or the Q&A. And if you have a question, but we don't have time to get to it, put it in anyway, because you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to like answer them afterwards and send them on over so that they could get added to the webinar resources. And yeah, sorry, close the Q&A window by accident. I don't see any open questions. So I'm going to, in the meantime, say a really quick thank you to everyone for your time today. And just a reminder, you can reach out to us at Thriving Workplaces. My email is there on our website. And then also, making sure that you're staying in touch with Safe Care BC, because of course they've got lots of great resources for you too. I'm going to stop sharing and turn it on over to Carissa to share about some upcoming webinars. And thank you again for being such a great audience, folks.